Well, it looks like I may have been wrong.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On Mea Culpa, formerly known as Locked On MLB. This is the podcast where I take a look at some of the things I said about Shohei Ohtani in that situation that may have been wrong. That's right. Some of the things I said were wrong. Some of the things I said weren't, but it's enough to make me come on and say, wow, gotta face the music if things didn't turn out the way you thought they were happening. Hey, we're also going to talk a little bit about baseball. Today's episode is brought to you. Who the heck is sponsored today? Oh, it's by eBay Motors. From brakes to exhaust kits and beyond, eBay Motors has over 122 million parts to keep your ride or die alive. With all the parts you need, the prices you want, it's easy to bring home a big win. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. Guaranteed fit only at U.S. customers. Hey, for those of you who don't know who I am, I'm Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. I have been a baseball podcaster for many years, and this is my sixth season here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Hey, for those of you who are watching live, could you do me a favor? Post in the comments to make sure that you can hear me, because I've actually had some tech issues recently, and I haven't done a live one since I've fixed the tech issue. So just let me know in the comments section if you can hear me and if the tech problem has been cleared up. Follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or on Instagram. I am your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. All right, let's get to it. For the last couple of weeks, certainly since the 20-something of May, when the Otani story first broke, I have done several episodes of it on the topic, and I have had I don't want to say the conviction, because I didn't convict anybody, but I had the mindset that what we heard was two different stories from Otani's camp. One that was put out by his crisis prevention team, which was, hey, he was covering his friend's bets, may not have been the right thing to do, but that's what he did. And the second from Otani's press conference himself was, no, he's been stealing from me. Well, I had been, how do I say this? Pretty, 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 pretty convinced that the first story was the one that was correct. And the second one was a wild market correction. And I stated as such. And the way it was presented then, that seemed to be the case. In my slight defense, I did say both stories. He was committing fraud, he was covering gambling debts, would have made sense on their own. I said it was suspicious we heard both stories. I chose door number one and said that one seemed more likely. It may have been more likely. However, it turns out my hunch, and when I said this is what I think happened, turned out to be wrong. And some people who specifically asked me about this, a couple people wrote to me saying, would I come on here and say, yeah, are you wrong? Cameron Coy, who is a frequent commenter, said, now that the feds have announced that Ippei is going to plead to theft of Otani's money, are you ready to admit that your take on this was a rush to judgment? I don't know if it was a rush to judgment. It turns out that my hunch was incorrect. I wasn't necessarily rushing to judgment. I said something smells fishy here because we're hearing two different stories, which was true. However, my take on it and my assumptions on it turned out not to be correct. And I sat back and go like, look at that. The main thing, the two main things that caused me to think the other way was how hard is it to, it must be very difficult to transfer out of your account millions of dollars without the other person knowing. Okay, well, as it turned out, Ippei figured out how to do it. I guess when you got millions of dollars on the line to a bookie, life finds a way. He Jurassic Park that. In my eyes, Ippei was an interpreter who got in over his head, and he needed that money. And I didn't give him the credit that maybe he figured it out. Maybe there's a way to do it. I don't know. I can't figure out how to do it on Venmo, but then again, I'm not a con artist. But and the, but it turns out he figured it out. All right. On that, I was 100% wrong. By the way, please, if anyone's listening here, if you could put in the comments to make sure the sound is working here. As I said, I did have a tech problem the other day, and I'd rather not have it look like that I was doing a mea culpa with no sound to cover my butt. I'm happy to admit when I'm wrong. And on that one, I was 100% wrong. I was 1000% wrong. And I was that wrong with my chest puffed out as if to say, ha, I'm right. Turns out I wasn't. And the other aspect was I said, what kind of crisis management team okay. Okay. Thank you, Jonathan Curran. And thank you for getting my Jurassic Park Life Finds a Way reference here. Um, so yeah, the other thing I want to just bring up, I don't know the name of the crisis prevention agency that he hired, but here's the deal. If you're having a crisis in your organization, don't hire this group. Oh my God. Now look, I happen to have a master's in communication from Washington State University. I don't mean to brag. I don't mean to brag. But one of the classes that I took at Washington State University was in crisis management, especially in a corporate situation to act out what you need to do if a company you work for is involved in a public crisis. I'd write a whole paper and do all sorts of research on what to do on that. Okay? Now, there's a lot of things, there's a lot of ways you need to keep all the stakeholders informed. Stakeholders are the people who are most affected by the events of this crisis. And if you use, then when I was there were the psychological thinkers. Gillian and James were the two main people we read about. And the final two plans of any crisis prevention is make a plan and obtain commitment. Here is the plan that we're sticking to, and obtain commitment from all the major stakeholders before you go public. Everyone, this is how we're going to do it. This is how we're going to prevent it. Everybody involved in it has to be on board. They didn't do those final two steps, which are kind of sort of the most important steps, which is confirm with everybody and have a unified plan, because nothing makes a crisis more of a crisis than chaos. Now, the Otani camp is a multi-million-dollar corporation at this point. And far be it from me to think they would hire a crisis prevention team that would at least get a B plus at Washington State University. So I'm going to make a lot of opinions here. I'm going to say a lot of things, and sometimes going to puff out my chest. And if I'm wrong, and in this case, there was one thing I was very, very wrong about, which was the ability to be able to wire that money. I thought it would be a hell of a lot harder than this. And maybe it was. Maybe it was a long process. Maybe he had some sort of computer genius. I don't know. But here's the deal. I know the following. A, he hired an incompetent uh, crisis management team. And I'm always slow to come to a conclusion that someone hired an idiot. But evidently they did. Two, I characterize Ippei as an in over his head gambler. Basically, I saw him as Robert De Niro in Mean Streets, or maybe Fredo Corleone, or someone like that, instead of a genuine con man. I was wrong on that. And three, if I'm wrong, I'll be the first one to say it. And this one major part was, you know what? If I made a stance, I made it very clear the whole time. I'm not pronouncing him guilty. I wasn't. I just said there was something weird about the story. And there still is. But it is no longer an opinion that Ippei was committing fraud and everything like that. He sang to the feds. Wow. Look at that. Who knew? So I can't wait to read the book about this and the behind the scenes. And I can't wait to find out what's happening behind the scenes during those few days when he was put in front of cameras to tell story number one, because that is going to be a great book, a great Netflix special, and a fabulous chapter in the next episode of Ken Burns' Baseball. But yes, there were a couple things I was 100% wrong about. What are you going to do? And LD writes, at least in this world, there are a few people who not only admit when they're wrong, but do it publicly. I'm serious. We have a real problem with people saying, I don't know, or I was wrong. Well, I don't have a problem with it, especially when it's clear. You know, when I've said it publicly, what am I supposed to do? Erase all those other episodes? We had too many sponsors. And speaking of that, let's hear from our new friends at Policygenius. Policygenius is a smarter way to buy insurance. Their proprietary technology makes it easy to compare personalized quotes and policies from top rated insurers side by side. Policygenius's team of licensed experts is here to answer your questions, handle paperwork, and help you make decisions with confidence. They work for you, not for the insurance companies. From exploring coverage options to making policy adjustments as your life changes, Policygenius is your advocate at every step. And Policygenius is committed to your information remaining secure. Appropriately, your security is top priority. They use industry leading security practices to help keep your information safe. Check life insurance off your to-do list in no time with Policygenius. Head to policygenius.com/lockedonmlb or click the link in the description to get your free life insurance quotes and see how much you can save. That's policygenius.com/lockedonmlb. And it's also time to hear a little bit from our good friends over at eBay Motors. Passion, drive, patience. The formula for winning championship is also keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors has everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof rack, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether they're into speed, power, style, eBay Motors has you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride every time or your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not cash. With all the parts you need at all the prices you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only, exclusions apply. eBay Motors Guaranteed Fit, available only to U.S. customers. Hey, let me tell you something. If you are just watching Fox Sports or ESPN or doing all that, let me tell you something. You may be hearing a lot of yelling and a lot of screaming. And do you what you may not be hearing? You may not be hearing someone say, "Hey, uh, I was wrong, and I own up to it." Do you hear that often there? Well, do you where you'll hear that? You'll hear that at Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Day brings you the analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day. Hey, I am not going to uh, I'm not going to go through the list of people who I argued with over the bunch, but I will say, please check out Locked On Dodgers with the great Jeff Snyder. He's been the Locked On Dodger host for the last few years. Really great guy. And it's funny, we had privately, this was not a public, or this was privately, we had a back and forth about this. And um, hey, Jeff, you were right. You were right. My hat is tipped. How do I tie this back to baseball? Hey, I'll know what to do. The Angels, remember them? They used to employ Shohei Ohtani. Last year, I was right about something that I screamed about on this podcast. Funny, I just did an ad read about not yelling on the podcast. Um, by the way, if you're wondering why I was chuckling at the ad read for our new sponsors, um, there's nothing about Policygenius I find funny. I just felt we were just reading a thing about having information secure, and I was almost going to include Shohei Otani should have used this company if they were so worried about getting his information secure. Last year, I said that the uh, Angels should have traded Shohei Otani. I said either sign him to a long-term deal or trade him, because keeping him is worst case scenario. And I said that you're not going to get full value for him. That's impossible. But you're going to get better than a draft pick. And I also encouraged the Orioles to trade for Ohtani because I felt they had a chance to win the pennant last year. You had a down year from the Yankees. You had a down year from the Red Sox. You had a vulnerable Houston team. You had nobody of note. Sorry, from the Central. And I said the Orioles had a chance to go to the World Series for the first time since Return of the Jedi came out. And I said, if it cost them Jackson, if a trip to the World Series for the first time since Jim Palmer was an active player was going to cost you Jackson Holliday, I said that's a absolutely minuscule price to pay. And fact of the matter is, the Angels didn't do piddly poo. And the Orioles really didn't do piddly poo, and we saw that they didn't have the firepower to get past the world champion Texas Rangers. Now, I will say at the time I was saying that Ohtani was still pitching, so I said they would get a pitcher and they would get a hitter. They would get a burst of excitement. And I said it would have been like when Kawhi played for the Toronto Raptors that one year, or Jack Morris played for the Twins, or Ivan Rodriguez played for the Marlins. They were only there for 1 year, but they won a championship, and it was worth it for everybody. Well, as it turns out, the Jackson Holliday era has begun. And with the victory over the Red Sox, come from behind victory against the Red Sox, first of all, I think the Red Sox strong start is going to be has been a little bit of an illusion. I mean, okay, I would love to see the Red Sox do well. Full disclosure, I don't think they have the horses, and we saw it last night. I mean, they jumped out to a 5-0 lead, and then then the roof caves in. Now, Holliday wound up driving in a run, and there you go. He's playing at second base. You got Gunnar Henderson at shortstop, and Mountcastle at first. I mean, you're having the Henderson, Rutschman, Santander, Mountcastle, Mullins, Holliday. This is a phenomenal lineup of talent that if you're a Baltimore fan, you got to be salivating, because you're starting to see the Burns trade has given them a legit ace. They didn't get a good start last night from Cole Irvin, but look what the bullpen did. The Red Sox were smacking them around, and then Akin, Bauman, and Kimbrel, who, by the way, I'm still not a huge Kimbrel fan, not at this point in his career, but you give credit where credit is due. And the Orioles, who didn't get out of the gate particularly strong, have dusted themselves off. The Yankees are off to a phenomenal start, but the Holiday era and the getting this crew together is exactly what Baltimore needs, and in so many ways, it's exactly like it's exactly what the baseball needs. There were some people talking about the Orioles as if they were a small market team. They should be a big, huge regional team, and they should be taking over that region of the country, as the roots are much deeper than the Nationals. And the Nationals, they've had a couple of decent games and everything like that, and but they got clobbered by San Francisco last night. This should be the years and years of Oriole fandom that has been looking to explode with excitement, and to finally put a World Series in Camden Yards. My God, we've had a World Series in the ballpark in Arlington and Globe Life Field. The Rangers have built 2 stadiums since the opening of Camden Yards, and guess what? Both of them have hosted a World Series. The Braves have played the World Series in 3 different stadiums since the opening of Camden Yards. We got to get ourselves a World Series. It's one of those beautiful ballparks of baseball. We got to throw it in there, and to do it in the Oriole way, I love the fact that he got number 7 and that Cal Ripken gave it the thumbs up. You can't get the thumbs up from Brooks Robinson or Earl Weaver anymore. You can't get it from Frank Robinson anymore. You may be able to get it from Jim Palmer, but from that, the ghosts of Orioles past have basically moved on. But you have a new group. And if you saw the in memoriam video that I put out right around the time the Otani story was exploded, guess what? I put a shot in there deliberately. Only one person caught it, or at least one person mentioned it. During the end part where I'm really trying to pull at your heartstrings with the Brooks Robinson section, I had a shot of the current Orioles players shaking hands with them. And I have them shaking hands with Rutschman. And the reason I put that in there is because Rutschman is one of the star new faces of the Orioles, the Oriole way. And we're seeing, we saw that he was a quality player last year, and he's going to probably be one of the faces of this new Oriole. I don't want to say dynasty. They got to do something more than win a division once, but certainly the go-to team this year. And give the Yankees credit. The Yankees are off to a great start, but the Orioles were kind of the consensus pick. They're the defending champions, and they have a homegrown team that is probably going to excite this fan base. And I wanted that shot of Rutschman and Brooks Robinson. I deliberately put that in there as a sort of, hey, I'm handing you the torch. You're now in charge. And now with Jackson Holliday and Rutschman and all of them, this is going to be an exciting team. So let's hang on to it, folks. Now, meanwhile, there's a couple other teams that had a lot of, for the lack of a better word, hype about them that are off to not exactly an inspiring start, which makes me wonder, is it time to think about a Hall of Famer to come out of the woods? Playoff time is starting up. We've already seen the great tournament in the NCAA, but we're going to have the Stanley Cup Finals and the NBA Finals coming up soon. The playoffs are going to be taking us through the next couple of months. And do you know what that means? You got to head on over to FanDuel. FanDuel is the best place to bet on every game. Right now, new customers get $150 in bonus bets guaranteed. That's $150, win or lose. Bet on anything from slap shots to slam dunks, all on an app that's safe, secure, and easy to use. What are you waiting for? Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet an automatic win. FanDuel, it's America's #1 sportsbook. Locked On has launched the first ever national sports 24/7 streaming channel on YouTube, and now it's available on the Amazon Fire TV in the free Fire TV's channel app. Locked On Sports Day is here for you 24/7, covering the top sports stories of the day with local experts of Locked On, plus our national shows like this one, covering every league. Find Locked On Sports today, now available on the free Fire TV's channel app. All right, let me just bring this up. By the way, I forgot to do the trivia question. The trivia question I did the other day. I was eager to talk about the Otani thing. As I said, that the A's, when they were playing Kansas City, what city did they announce they were going to move to? And in fact, made a press conference, move from Kansas City. That wasn't Oakland. And Scott Horstmeyer, Big John 08865 got it right that they were going to move to Louisville, Kentucky, and they were going to rename themselves the Kentucky Colonels. And the main reason they're going to do that was they were wearing hats that said KC for the KC A's. And if they moved there, they didn't have to change the hats. They would just stand for the Kentucky Colonels. So that would have been a rebranding. So good job there. And I'm going to have a trivia question at the end of today as well. Hey, Jim Leyland's going to the Hall of Fame this year. He was a terrific manager who nearly won it with the Pirates, um, went over to a new team and wound up beating Cleveland in extra innings of Game 7 of the World Series. Left that job for a third team that didn't go over that well, took some time off, and then came back and led Detroit to 2 pennants and turned them back into contenders. That career, and now he's going to the Hall of Fame. That career eerily echoes another manager, Joe Maddon, who took a moribund franchise in Tampa Bay, almost won it all with them, jumped ship to another team, beat Cleveland in extra innings of Game 7 of the World Series, this time as manager of the Cubs, went to a third team, the Angels, but nothing ever works well with the Angels, and now has taken some time off of managing. Well, Maddon didn't suddenly get dumb. When he was signed with the Angels, everyone was saying, oh my God, we got a Hall of Fame manager. It didn't work out because guess what? Nothing works out. Nothing works out with the Angels. And I'm going to be doing a podcast pretty soon about, is it time to declare California fans in general as long suffering? But that's a preview for an upcoming show. I think there are 2 franchises, and one we do not have a small sample size for. We have a very big sample size for. Another one, you got to say, oh, wait a minute, something's got to happen here, of 2 teams with a ton of talent and could be giant regional teams in terms of their appeal, and have started the year sluggish and somewhat uninspired. And the funny thing is they played each other yesterday, Seattle and Toronto. They've both gotten off to disappointing starts. Seattle looked like they had a ton of talent, a great pitching staff, and we all know the piles of talent that they have up with Seattle's great pitching staff, had lots of talent, barely missed the playoffs last year, were actually in first place by themselves at one point. Toronto has made the playoffs, but the last couple of years, their playoff showing has been terrible. In fact, when the Blue Jays lost to the Mariners a couple of years ago, blowing that huge lead, I said, well, looks like the Blue Jays are getting a new manager. No, he's still there. And then last year, when Schneider, whether it was Schneider or the front office, made the horrible pitching decision in that game against Minnesota, and I thought, well, clearly they're going to bring in a new manager. No, he's still there. It's been multiple years in Toronto, and now Toronto has come. They're sluggish. It's not that they're bad. They just don't look like they're not playing inspired baseball. And it's funny that the Mariners and the Blue Jays were playing each other. And I was thinking about this beforehand, and of course it went into extra innings because neither team seems to be wanting to win anything. And Toronto is the team of Canada. Think about that as a region. And Seattle, the entire Northwest, Portland, Spokane, Boise, all of Washington, Vancouver, all that. They could be that whole region the way the Red Sox are all of New England. And to win, the Mariner fans are exploding. They're the one franchise to have never played in a World Series. Ever. Not even on PlayStation. And so those 2 franchises, I think, could use a burst of energy of a new manager. Now, I'm not quick to pull the hook on Scott Service, but when you have someone floating out there like Joe Madoon, who I'm sure is dying to show that it wasn't him in Anaheim, it was the ownership and the management, and give him here's a talented pitching staff, here's a talented lineup, here's a region that's drooling to get a team to get to the World Series and to win a title. If I were Toronto, I would have hired Joe Maddon in the offseason. I also would have hired one of Bruce Bochy's lieutenants, but I digress. But if we get to the first real checkpoint of the season, the first real checkpoint of the season is Memorial Day. If we get to the end of May and the Mariners and the Blue Jays are still playing like teams with their head in the clouds, do you know what? I have to say that you got to make a change. Because you can't blow this opportunity. You can't blow this opportunity to try to win a pennant and try to not waste the talent that's on your team. No team ever wasted a great talent more than when the Mariners had Randy Johnson Edgar Martinez, Alex Rodriguez, Ken Griffey Jr., Jay Buhner, and Jamie Moy are all on the same team and couldn't even get to Game 7 of the ALCS. And of course, the Blue Jays had the most talented team I've ever seen in my life in the mid 1980s and couldn't get to the World Series. So we've also seen them with good teams, recently, and Hall of Famers. Ichiro's prime, Felix Hernandez's prime, that great team the Blue Jays had in the mid 2010s. You can't afford to blow it again. If you've got a Hall of Fame manager, have Operation Leland show up. And hey, which brings us to today's trivia question. The Marlins won a World Series after Jim Leland's time. They won in 2003. And the great Jack McKeon was the manager, a baseball lifer who had managed and won Manager of the Year and part of a lot of different teams that they gave the keys to, and he finally won. And as I pointed out in an earlier episode, bringing managers out of the dustbin has certainly worked the last two World Series with Dusty Baker and the Astros and Bruce Bochy last year. They did that with the Marlins in 2003 with Jack McKeon finally winning his title. But he came in midway through the season. Who was the manager who began the 2003 season as manager of the Marlins, was replaced, and they went on to win the World Series without him? That is the trivia question for today. So follow us at Locked On MLB Pods on Twitter or on Instagram. I'm your pal Sully. I'm at Sully Baseball on Twitter, Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. I'm going to talk baseball the rest of the way and admitting when I'm wrong. This has been Locked On MLB for the 11th day of April, 2024. I am yours, Paul Francis Sullivan, hat in hand, saying I was wrong, and I'm Sully.